and liftoff.
In 1981, the space shuttle made a surprising discovery. Using a new type of radar, NASA took a 30-mile wide scan of the Sahara Desert. The radar pierced the sand to a depth of 16 feet and revealed what looked like a hidden network of ancient waterways crisscrossing the desert. This finding stumped scientists. 3 million years ago, the Sahara turned from rainforest into desert. Now it seemed that it had been home to a lot of water at some point in the following 3 million years. Researchers followed the NASA images north into Tunisia, to the edge of a deep depression in the Sahara, the site of their first clue.
This is what we're looking for. Got some quite intact shells here. This deposit is largely composed of intact shells.
And these are not shells from the ocean.
So here we have half of a Cadastroderma glaucum shell, which is a clear sign of a freshwater lake. This is just one example of what must be millions of shells. We must be somewhere near the shoreline of the lake here.
Further shell deposits revealed that this lake was giant, about the size of West Virginia. But the shells provide even more remarkable evidence: the date when this lake existed. Carbon dating puts them at 90,000 years old and leads to one conclusion.
To have all these shells here, we must have had a lot of rain falling in the vicinity of this lake and a green Sahara.
Scientists fanned out across the Sahara to investigate other satellite images. They searched for any dips in its landscape that looked like they once held a body of fresh water.
So what was really exciting for me about those radar images that were produced by NASA, we can link this to the GPS, and we're finding evidence of lakes throughout the desert. And some of these lakes are massive.
3 different lake locations were confirmed by the presence of freshwater shells. The series of ancient lakes were so large, they've been dubbed mega lakes.
So this is the far shore of the mega lake. And there was just one of many lakes across the Green Sahara.
When Drake added up the evidence of all the lake locations, he uncovered an astonishing fact.
Okay, so if this is North Africa here, and this is the edge of the Sahara Desert, so we're here in Tunisia with a mega lake here, and we know there's another mega lake here in southern Libya, an even larger one here in Chad. If they all meet their maximum size, they would have covered 10% of the Sahara.
That would have made them 3 times larger than the Great Lakes. What is now the biggest desert on Earth was once home to some of the planet's largest bodies of fresh water. Sudden changes in climate have been connected to everything from volcanic activity to meteors hitting the Earth. But climate researcher Peter Domenical had a hunch this wasn't the first time it had happened. He turned to his archive of deep ocean cores.
Our approach was to use deep sea sediments as this continuous tape recorder, if you will, of past climate change in Africa.
By looking at the levels of desert dust in cores dating back hundreds of thousands of years, he discovered the Sahara had changed more than once.
When we first collected these measurements, I really kind of almost fell back in my chair because what we saw was there are many switches like this in the climate system.
To explain these regular dramatic changes, Domenical looked beyond the Sahara to the rotation of the Earth itself. More specifically, small wobbles in the Earth's orbit around the Sun. The theory is that the wobble causes the Earth to tilt slightly. So the monsoons which drench southern Africa today shift up, pouring rain onto the dunes of the Sahara. Crucially, these wobbles occur every 20,000 years.
So there's this perfect one-to-one match between when Africa was wet and the stage of the wobble cycle. And this goes back millions of years.
Each time the rain belt moves up, the landscape is transformed and the desert turns green.
To me, the single most impressive thing about the Sahara is how small fluctuations in something as simple as a wobble in the Earth's orbit can lead to these really just totally dramatic changes in the climate of a region that's so large.
Scientists now had evidence of how and why the Sahara turned green. They knew that giant lakes covered much of the desert, but they had no proof they were connected. Were these vast, isolated rain pools or part of an interconnected river system, as suggested by NASA's radar images? Nick Drake gets word that in 2009, archaeologists have made an important discovery that supports the river theory. Stone tools found not far from the site of the megalake in Tunisia. The first step is to identify the shoreline of the ancient lake.
Ah, now looks good. So, we've got some freshwater mollusks.
These tiny shells are a good sign of the lake. Now he searches for what may have been drinking the water when the megalake existed.
We have what looks like a part of a jawbone of a small herbivore. You can see 3 teeth running along there. Some sort of gazelle.
So animals must have existed here in the desert when it was green.
Okay, so we've got a stone tool here. It's become blunted, and they've retouched it with a lot of very fine flakes off the edge. The fact that we've got stone tools and we've got dead animals suggests hunting. And this was the animal that had been hunted. And then we've got water, so people sitting around a water hole waiting for animals to come to drink and then killing them, eating them, leaving them behind.
It's an important find. A Stone Age tool shows people lived on the shore of this ancient lake. And 90,000 years ago was a turning point, not just in the story of the Sahara, but in the history of humanity itself. We are all descended from one group of people in East Africa, the birthplace of humankind. Sometime between 80 and 120,000 years ago, modern humans started the long journey out of Africa. No one knows for certain what route they took. The prevailing view is that the Sahara was impassable, so humans left East Africa and traveled to the coast, then crossed a land bridge into the Arabian Peninsula. But Drake suspects that if the megalakes were fed by a river system, it would have created a green corridor across the burning sands.
So our ancestors could have followed these river systems, gone round the lakes, followed the next river system, round the next lake, and the next river system and the last lake, and then they'd been in North Africa, and it would be simple for them to just move out. The lake is a good story. The rivers plus the lake is a very concrete story.
To find proof of his theory, Drake heads to one of the few areas in the desert where water still flows, an oasis. He finds a small spring that shelters a valuable clue.
Caught some. Great. Cichlid fish. Nearly all cichlid fish are found south of the Sahara Desert. This particular type of cichlid is the only example north of the Sahara Desert.
This cichlid bears a strong resemblance to its closest relative that lives in Lake Tanganyika. But this lake is almost 3,000 miles away on the other side of the Sahara.
So the big question is, how did it get here? And the most obvious answer is that it swam across the Green Sahara. Modern humans, who could live in lots of different types of environments, would have presumably found it very easy. A darn sight easier than this fish.
These rivers and lakes were not to last. The door slammed shut on the green corridor. But scientists now know that the Earth's wobble makes the Sahara like a pendulum. It goes from wet to dry every 20,000 years, like clockwork.